Last December, the Straits Times reported that tech talent most in demand in Singapore as Singapore hiring picks up in 2022. According to a salary benchmark report by the Randstad, a junior software engineer can expect to earn $5,000 a month, and an experienced one, $14,000. Any senior software engineer here? If you are, let me know after this service. I would like to be your friend. But this trend is by no means surprising because the amount of data and information that we are currently producing as well as consuming is literally at mind-boggling levels. According to an article by Forbes, 90% of the world's data was produced in 2 years, with 2.5 quintillion bytes of data created each day. 1 quintillion is 18 zeros, has 18 zeros. And this was back in 2018. These numbers have been growing exponentially because we are digitizing every single thing about our world bit by bit, pun intended. Today, you can go online and search about literally anything. You can learn a new language like Spanish. You can learn how to bake a croissant. You can learn a new programming language like Python. Or you can learn how to give a good sermon. And yes, these are things that I search in my free time. And because everything is available online, this means that you can become virtually an expert in almost everything in this world. Think about it. Your average child, average 8 years old, right now has more access to information and data than all of the greatest intellectuals of the last century combined. It is truly remarkable how far we have come, and this is only going to keep increasing. And the question for us this morning is that with all this knowledge, have we become any wiser? How many ask your neighbor beside you, have you become wiser? Are our individual lives becoming more fulfilling and meaningful? Is our society progressing morally and improving relationally at the same rate as we are consuming data? There are countless studies that talk about how our current generation is the most depressed, most anxious, and the loneliest generation of our time. Last July, a Gallup poll revealed that friendship is on the decline. Only 13% of those polled said that they have more than 10 close friends, compared to 33% in 1990. Not just that, only 59% of those polled said that they had a best friend, BFF, compared to 75% 3 decades ago. Just this week, I was having dinner with a group of youths, and one of the conversation starters was, if you could time travel, which year would you go to? And an 18-year-old, not 38 years old, an 18-year-old replied, I would like to go back 30 years ago, before smartphones were invented, so that I can experience deeper relationships with people. 18-year-old saying that. It's so simple, yet so telling at the same time. We have got all this information, all this data, and all these insights and analytics, but our lives are not becoming more wholesome. Why is it that we are missing? And in our passage this week, James reveals the answer. He tells us that what we are really missing is not more information, but true wisdom. Okay, let's read our passage for today, found in James chapter 3, starting from verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly and spiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. So far in our journey through the book of James, we have looked at very practical actions that flow out of authentic Christian faith, such as doing good works, loving your neighbors, and just last week, taming your tongue. At this point in this letter, it might appear that James is addressing something completely different, right? He moves from talking about doing deeds to understanding wisdom. And this passage is like what the university students might describe, very fluff, right? Sounds good, but how do I apply? Actually, James is still expounding on the overall theme of his letter, which is the importance of deeds. Okay, to James, it is not enough to know. What we know must be translated into deeds. These are the proof of not just authentic Christian faith, but genuine wisdom as well. Okay, this means that contrary to popular belief, you don't have to be old in order to be wise. Okay, wherever you are right now, you can gain this true wisdom that comes from heaven, and your life will thrive and flourish as a result. Okay, so today from James chapter 3, I'd like to share with you 3 things about this true wisdom. Okay, the nature of this wisdom, the effect of this wisdom, and the source of this wisdom. So let's begin. Okay, first up, the nature of wisdom. Okay, when you look at the message title today, Gaining True Wisdom, I think the most natural question that you might have is, what then is false wisdom? If the title was simply Gaining Wisdom, then it would have been a lot more straightforward. Is there such a thing as false wisdom? And that's the crux of the passage today. James is telling us that there are really 2 types of wisdom. Okay, let's read those parts again real quick. Verse 15, such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. In my free time, I try to listen to a wide range of musical genres. I listen to classical music, Chopin and Paganini, so classy. I listen to TikTok songs so that I know what the young people are into. But out of all the different genres, my favorite is rock. I like the louder volume. I like the distorted effects, the extended guitar solos. I love it. I love Iwan's guitar solo just now. And the bass drum accompaniment that makes your head bob through the music. But here's the thing. Rock bands generally don't have a good name, right? People generally have a very negative view on them. I mean, what is the first image that comes to your mind when I say a rock band guitarist? What's the first image that comes to mind when I say a rock band guitarist? You probably think of a guy with long hair, a lot of tattoos all over, smoke cigarette, and maybe wearing a devil horn on his head. Or a lot of piercing as well. Many years ago, I talked to a brother in church, and he told me that Christians should not listen to rock or metal music. I shared my opinion that I think instrumental music is neutral. And what we should really be looking out for is lyrics that are ungodly. To which he replied, no. Music that are written by ungodly people are never neutral. They are demonic in nature. Okay, I'm not here to convince you that it's all right for Christians to listen to rock music. But my point is this: we tend to limit our understanding of demonic influences to the area of entertainment. My youth leader used to tell us, don't watch horror movies and don't play horror games because they glorify evil. Okay, well, there is truth to what he said. The work of the devil and his demons is so much bigger than trying to get people to glorify him. What do you think is the goal of the devil? If you have followed our Cultivate devotion this week, Right? I shared that the aim of the devil is to lead as many people as possible away from the one true God. Okay, Christians, we like to tell one another and tell our friends, God has a wonderful plan for your life. We say this, right? God has a plan for your life. But do you know the devil has a plan for your life too? A plan to deprive you and to harm you, a plan to take away your home and rob you of your future. Charles Baudelaire, a French poet, he said, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist. Because the devil does not need to get us to worship him or even acknowledge him. He wants to influence you without you knowing. So help me out. Tell the person on your left, God has a plan for you. Then tell the person on your right, so does the devil. And James tells us that one of the most effective ways for the devil that the devil employs to fulfill his plan is to influence our understanding of wisdom. He tells us that such wisdom is earthly. It is getting us to be overly fixated, attached, and devoted to the temporal things on earth. It is spiritual, okay? Or in some other translation, sensual, meaning getting us to prioritize ourselves above all. The devil just needs to get us to focus on something other than God by influencing conventional wisdom. You only live once. Enjoy as much as you can. Have you heard that before? You do you. Okay, just don't let other people tell you how to live your life. Or, nothing is more important than living your own life. Okay, while it might seem that people are freely making conscious, deliberate life decisions on their own, James tells us that there is often powerful and subtle demonic powers influencing them. C.S. Lewis wrote an intriguing Christian novel called The Screwtape Letter. The story takes the forms of a series of letters from a senior demon, Screwtape, to his nephew, Wormwood, a junior demon. And throughout his letters, Screwtape taught his nephew on how best to tempt a man into sin and eventually into hell. Okay, let me read to you an excerpt from the book. It does not matter how small the sins are, provided that their cumulative effect is to edge the man away from the light and out into nothing. Murder is no better than cards, if cards can do the trick. Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. And because it is so subtle and insidious, James warns us that we need to keep a lookout for false wisdom that is demonic in nature. On the other hand, the true wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. Okay, if false wisdom is all about focusing on self, then true wisdom means it's all about focusing on others. Okay, instead of promoting one's life, true wisdom seeks to better the lives of the people around. Now, this is so counterintuitive in our individualistic culture, isn't it? Right? Shouldn't we be looking out for ourselves first before others? Actually, true wisdom is what we truly want for our lives. Okay, James tells us this in his opening of the passage. Verse 13, who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom. Okay, if you have followed our Cultivate devotion this week, I share with you that there are two Greek words, right, for the word good. Okay, the first is agathos. Okay, the word agathos means virtuous, upright, and generous. But the Greek word for good used in verse 13 is the second one, and it is kalos. And kalos literally means beautiful. What this means is that all of us, don't just want to live an agathos life, right? To be a righteous, charitable person who is always doing the right thing. We don't even just want to live a good life according to the world's definition, right? To be materially endowed. What we truly want is for our lives to be kalos, to live a beautiful and attractive life that will motivate and inspire others. True wisdom is selfless and beautiful. Okay, not only do true and false wisdom have diametrically opposed natures, but both of them also lead to different outcomes. So the second point is about the effect of wisdom. Fritz Haber was a German chemist who received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1918 for his invention of the Haber-Bosch process. It is a method used in industry to synthesize ammonia from nitrogen gas and hydrogen gas. The invention is significant because food production for half the world's population right now depends on this method for producing nitrogen fertilizers. And according to statistics, 2 out of 5 people on the planet are kept alive thanks to Haber's discovery. If his story had ended here, people would remember him as a hero. But Haber's life took a dark turn during World War I when he developed chlorine gas for Germany to be used in trench fighting. The same knowledge in chemistry that gave life to countless people was now used to take lives. Haber eventually came to be called the father of chemical warfare because long after his passing in 1934, his research was used to develop Zyklon B, the gas used by the Nazi regime to kill millions of Jews, including some of Haber's close relatives. Haber famously said, "During peacetime, a scientist belongs to the world, but during wartime, he belongs to his country." As a patriot, he thought that it was wise of him to use his knowledge to serve the ambition of his country. But little did he know that his work will pave the way for the most evil practice in human history. The story of Fritz Haber perfectly illustrates James' point that it is not about how much you know, but what you do with what you know that matters. And for the rest of the passage, James further explains the differences between true and false wisdom. Okay, we can read this from verse 14. "But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere, peacemaker who sow in peace, reap a harvest of righteousness." You notice when James compares the two different kinds of wisdom, it is in the context of relationships and community. James was most likely thinking of the Christian community, the church, when he wrote these words. But I think the same principles can be extended to every other community in our lives. Let's do a mental exercise together, shall we? Think about all the relationships in your family, at your workplace, in your social outside social groups, and even in your church. Think about all the relationships in your life. What causes relationships to break down and spiral into disorder? Is it merely incompatibility or disagreement? Here's the thing. Nobody starts out saying, "I'm going to mess up some relationships." Right? Nobody starts out saying that, "I'm going to break some relationship." Nobody said that. Every relational breakdown every relational crack begins with people doing what they think is the right thing. Okay, let's have an illustration to understand this. Okay, all the husbands in the house. Imagine you clock in 14 hours in office and you have just reached home. what's the first thing you do? What's the first thing you do? What's the first thing y'all do? Husbands. I think the most natural thing to do is to take a shower and then jump straight into entertainment, to unwind. Or maybe you don't shower, straight away unwind. Okay, totally not talking about myself. And you do that, husbands, you do that because you think that you work very hard and you deserve the break. It's the right thing to do. Now, all the wives in the house, how will you respond if you see your husband doing that? How will you respond if you see your husband come home straight away, just do his own thing? Would you get him an ice cold beer and give him a massage while he watches his TV? Very unlikely. If you do, tell me. I think you will feel upset that he does not connect with you after not seeing each other for the entire day. Right, ladies? At least, I think my wife will feel that way. So on one hand, the husband feels that it is right for the wife to leave him alone and let him take a break. On the other hand, the wife feels that it is right for the husband to connect with her relationally. Notice, each side insists that they have the right of way. And you can imagine, right, the rest of the quarrels that comes after. Okay, James tells us, false wisdom will cause people to harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition, which will eventually lead to relational disorder. Each time when we insist on our own way and think that we are doing the right thing, what we are really practicing is not wisdom, but selfishness. If your so-called wise action and decision does not promote relationship, then you really need to ask yourself, is that true wisdom in the first place? Or is that the devil's whispering his deception into you? On the other hand, the wisdom from heaven is totally different. Right? The wisdom, James tells us this wisdom is peace-loving, putting a high value on relational harmony. It is considerate, always mindful of what others need. It is submissive, open to see things from another point of view, and prepared to do it someone else's way. It is full of mercy and good fruit, extending compassion and forgiveness to those who need it. It is impartial, not showing favoritism to secure an advantage. It is sincere, with no need to fake anything to get what it wants out from people. You see, true wisdom does not ask the question, who is right? Right? We like to ask this question in any quarrel, who is right? True wisdom does not ask the question, who is right? Rather, it pursues the question, what is best for the relationship? What is the loving thing to do? Rather than saying, who is right? What is the loving thing to do? True wisdom will take you on the path towards selflessness, humility, and love, and away from bitter envy and selfish ambitions. Because you will want to do anything to promote the relationship. And the outcome of practicing true wisdom is that you will experience a lot less disorder and a lot more peace. And here's the thing, peace is not just something that we truly desire, but it is also what the world desperately needs. We need more people, the world needs more people to put aside the false wisdom that they have been holding on so tightly and to embrace the true wisdom that brings peace. So, how can we gain this true wisdom? And that brings us to the third and final point about the source of wisdom. My wife, Serene, was my first girlfriend, so my one and only love. After we got attached, a friend whom I served with in church said something interesting to me. She told me, "You are a changed person. You have become so much more relational and approachable." And I immediately understood what she was talking about. Because I used to be a lot more aloof in social settings, apathetic about building relationships, and arrogant in the way I serve with people. Right? So aloof, apathetic, arrogant. Wow, the triple A that you don't want. Right? And don't know what my wife see in me back then. The thing is that I was not aware of all my shortcomings. then at least, and I certainly did not make a conscious effort to improve my character. But somehow, in the process of learning how to conduct a romantic relationship and understanding how to love another person, I've learned, unconsciously, I've learned to put aside my pride and preferences for the sake of my beloved. And unbeknown to me then, the changes overflow to other relationships in my life. Okay, today I can say with certainty that one of the biggest sources of character growth in my life is my marriage. And it is not just the active nagging, challenging from my wife. Or my wife will challenge me, love your neighbor, go and buy things from them. Love your parents, go and visit them. Stop spending your time wisely, stop doing stupid things. Okay, it is not just the active challenging, but there is also the passive effect of wanting to love her more. For example, putting down my pride, saying sorry first in an argument, putting on a smile whenever I do things for her, because it matters to my beloved that I not only do the right things, but do it out of the right spirit. What ultimately changed me, and is still changing me, is not some lessons or pro tips on how to become a better lover. What changed me is the loving relationship itself. So how can we gain this true wisdom that will change our lives and transform our world? James tells us that it must first come down from heaven. Okay, but if wisdom is just some teachings or information like how we normally would understand it to be, how do we make sense of what James says? The wisdom must come down from heaven. Okay, we can find a clue in John chapter 1. Okay, let's read that. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through Him all things were made. Without Him nothing was made that has been made. He was in the world, and though the world was made through Him, the world did not recognize Him. He came to that which was His own, but His own did not receive Him. Yet to all who did receive Him, to those who believe in His name, He gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. We have seen His glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. The Greek word used in the original text for word is logos. Okay, even though it is simply translated to word in English, logos carried a lot of philosophical significance in the ancient Greek world. Ancient Greek philosophers were zealous about accumulating wisdom, and they were concerned with finding the ultimate reality that lies behind all things. They observed that the cosmos was constantly changing, but yet there is an organizing principle behind all those changes. So they came up with a term, logos, to describe the ultimate reality. Logos came to be understood as that give life and meaning to the universe. Okay, however, the Greek philosophers largely understood logos as an impersonal force rather than a personal being. So when John came to the scene, when we come to John chapter 1, we see that the Apostle John, he did something with the word logos that will be unthinkable to the Greek philosophers then. Rather than an impersonal force, John tells us that the logos, the one that they'll be talking about, or the word, is a personal being who can be received or rejected by other people. Not just that, the Word came down from heaven and incarnated as a human being to live among His creation. Jesus Christ did not come to just tell us what to do. He showed us how to live life that is truly life. Jesus is a true wisdom that comes from heaven. Jesus is peace-loving. He puts an end to the enmity between God and man. He is considerate and submissive. He wields ultimate power, but yet took on a position of a servant. He is merciful, impartial, and sincere. He upheld justice and extended forgiveness at his own expense. What this means is that true wisdom is not some intellectual information that you have to internalize or lessons you have to understand. True wisdom is a person you have to know personally, a person that you have to love, and a person you have to commit yourself to. The more you appreciate the sacrificial love that is shown to you in Christ Jesus, the greater the motivation you have to love others, including your worst enemy. The more you understand that forgiveness that is extended to you when Christ was punished on your behalf, the easier it will be for you to forgive others, even of their gravest wrong. When you know that you deserve nothing but have been given everything through Christ, you can give yourself fully to love others without worrying that you will be shortchanged or taken advantage of. The point is this: the more you love the true wisdom that comes from heaven, the more you commit yourself to Him, the more you find yourself becoming like Him, and the more peace and fulfillment you will experience in your life. Let me close. To our non-Christian friends who have visited us today or watching the stream right now, perhaps the message titled Gaining True Wisdom caught your attention, and you came to church this morning because you're hoping to receive some new teachings or some wisdom to live a better life. I just want to say that you have come to the right place. But the true wisdom that God wants to give to you is not a philosophy, but a person. The best thing that you can do with your life is to receive Him, know Him, and love Him. And the more you love Him, the wiser you'll become, and the better your life will be. And finally, to my Christian brothers and sisters, you and I, we could try with all the wisdom that we have, all the wisdom in this world, to heal our fractured community. Whether it is brokenness in your family, brokenness in your marriages, or brokenness in your friendship. We could try everything in our power to change the hearts of hardened men, but guess what? We can't. Worldly wisdom cannot bring two estranged people together. Worldly wisdom cannot unite them in love, cannot bring about real peace. But true wisdom can. Jesus can. And He is the wisdom that we need. He is the wisdom that the world desperately needs. So what we need to do as Christians, during our time in this world is to keep pointing people to the true wisdom. To remember that only His peace-making blood for the forgiveness of sin can heal our world.